Oh, I am so lucky, and y'all are so lucky that they don't let me do live feeds, because y'all would have got this. Because this is live, and this is where the good stuff is. Let me get my dance partner on. Okay, yeah, now I got my dance partner on. Be able to breathe with y'all. I've had my coffee, so my breath will definitely be labored because of the nice caffeine. Listen, this word triggers me still to this day, something fierce. So I knew this is something that I need to get on here and talk about and just say it. The word that triggers me is karma. And when people say karma, like I've always written and said, somebody says, karma's a bitch, ain't it? Yes, it is. And when you're young, coming up in your environment, you talk shit. Who doesn't? Okay, well, some people that grow up and they have a different family environment, a quiet environment, where, they do their schoolwork and they work, come home, do their thing. Some of us didn't grow up like that. We grew up in an environment where words were many, lives were many. There were so many people around, whether in your home, outside of your home, at school, churches, just anywhere and everywhere there were people. So you would be able to see different opinions, different words used, different thoughts and ideas and suggestions, and you would get to pick how you want to roll to be yourself in this world. There's so many stories, I can't even get into them. So we'll just keep with this topic, the karma thing. People would always say in my hearing, and I probably would say it too, then when something would happen to somebody, it would be like karma, and when we would have plenty of cuss words to go along with it. Also, people would do bad things to one another, including myself. Doing bad things to myself, allowing people to do bad things to me or around me. You're just growing up in an environment. You're just learning. You're just seeing things and coming to understand things, and never really truly understanding that you don't have to be involved. You don't have to be there at all. You can go home and do nothing. But most of the time people don't want to go home and do nothing unless you're trained in an environment to go home and to be at home and do nothing. I'm sorry, I just wasn't trained that way. So that's why I have these stories. So the karma, anytime somebody would mess with them, they would scream karma, hoping that the karma would get them because they did something to them they didn't like, and they felt they needed judgment right then. Like they wanted lightning to strike them like right then. Now, who can say what things are justified and what things are not? That's another thing. But then you kind of get a little older and you're around church, and the new replacement of karma is you will reap what you sow. it's usually in a good sense. You sow into God and the Word, and it will multiply in your life, in your heart, and good things will come from it. But then there's also that same little thing when you feel like you just want or need justice right now, Lord, because they are tripping. Whoever they are, whatever they are, and whatever they're saying or whatever they're doing, we want justice right now for the mishap. For some would say the fuck up. Whoever fucked up and fucked up our lives and fucked up our shit or fucked up somebody else's shit, we want them to pay right the fuck now. That's a street, that's life. Now in the church, they're like, Lord, you saw that, right? All right. And then when it comes to us, we're like, mercy, Lord, please. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean it that way. Or that's not what I meant. So there's so many variations of this. And we never really truly get to the bottom of why we're sharing those words out in the world. So I'm on here to give a little advice, because that's what God gives me to do. That is, start saying, hey, I went through this, somebody did this to me, or somebody said this to me. And you don't have to be totally give every detail, but at least tell people what are you so upset about that karma, that it triggers you, that you come on here and just go, karma, dude, karma. So then people like us, all we hear is the word karma, and the devil can use that, and past stuff comes up, and it just triggers a whole lot of stuff, a flood of stuff. And then we have to go sit with God, whether physically or in our hearts or in our minds, and get calmed down. Because like you saw when I come on here, well, coffee's really the main helper here, but that I was just like, oh, this needs to be said out loud, face to face on this thing here. Writing's not going to do this one. So listen, when you're on here and you say karma, give a little explanation of what it is that somebody said or did to you that you feel that God should strike them right then and there. Because once you've settled down, you know that's truly not the case, and you know that you've done it too. Like, we all have a trigger. And apparently this karma thing is a real big trigger for people. And then I had to come on here and say, me too. It's a trigger for me too. So I totally get it. I totally understand. And we all have something. I'm just, like people could say, my mental health situation, my physical health situation, my lung disease, and my need for oxygen, they could say that's karma, bitch. And they could mean it, because they are like, you deserve that. But nobody would really ever say that to my face. But they would do what I'm seeing online is somebody would get on there and the karma's a bitch, ain't it? But nobody would say, Heather, that karma came back to you. It's a bitch, ain't it? And yeah, it is. But I don't see it that way. It could be that way, but I don't see it that way. It would be so nice if the people that have those feelings and thoughts about me would get on here and say that on here, so that people could see and really hear it and hear why they say it and why they feel that way. See, that's what I mean. You're the one hollering karma, somebody says something or did something to you, explain it. Explain what they did. Explain the situation. Explain the person. I'm not on here trying to burn people. But I mean, people are always going to get burned because of this type of stuff. You're always talking about another person or yourself. I usually try to stick to certain things, and I usually try to say it in certain ways that the Lord gives me to say, because I'm not on here to, well, and that may be why they just say what they say and get off of there, because they're not on there to burn anybody. But that kind of is the karma, because they burned you, so burn them. But that's just, we just not really supposed to do that, because vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Okay, so we keep missing it. We keep letting the devil use us against each other, but also use us to project onto other people what we think God is saying. God's not saying that. God is saying, somebody says or does something to you, you go to them and you say, hey, and they just either ignore you or don't give a shit, or they come up with something crazy, but it's in their head, it's right. And they're like, hey, this is that. It's it. This is the only option. And you're like, number one, it shouldn't be the only option. But with somebody that you kind of just first dealing with, sometimes it's the only option, and you're like, okay, and you just got to let it go and let God work on it. That is the justice part. That is the reaping what you sow. That is all of that, because it unfolds. You're believing that they'll work on themselves, that you believe you're going to work on yourself and get yourself right, and they're going to get themselves right, and when the time comes, it'll come together. There are some things where that's just not possible. You have to say no and mean no and stay no with these people, because they are breaking people out here psychologically. We have psychological terrors out here. And we got people that are killing people with words, and there's no accountability for it. This type of situation is the accountability part. If they don't want to be accountable and you've approached them and you tried to do something and nothing ever worked, you will have to take it to the masses. You will have to take it. It does say that. It says that you talk to them first. They don't want to do it. Then you bring a couple of people along, and then that don't work. It says take it to the church. What is the church these days for those of us who are out here in the world? This right here. This is our church. This is the body of Christ. We're all out here. We're all saying we're Christians. We all say we're in the world, living in the world. And then, yes, there are Christians that are living inside the church and make a life inside the church. We need them too. They need us. Now, I know that. They don't know that sometimes. And it shows, because people don't want to help people, it seems like. It seems like everybody wants to talk about everybody and talk about their situation. And, oh my God, how terrible is that? Yeah, how terrible is that? But have you once prayed with me? I don't think so. Something's wrong there if you haven't. If you are my adult children and you haven't prayed with me yet, I know something's wrong. I'm your mom. You know something's wrong because you're my kids. And you know the word's important to me. You know the word's important to you. Prayer's important. Keeping someone at their best so that God can do great things, instead of not doing anything at all and starting drama and trouble unnecessarily. And I don't know what you're calling it. Instead of doing all that, there's a karma building up there. There's a justice thing building up there. There's you're reaping what you're sowing. You're sowing nothing, you're going to get nothing. There's all these things I could be saying. However, it's not always going to unfold that way. That's just not the way it's going to go. It's either going to work out, and God's going to work it out for our good, for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose, which that is us. Okay, it don't look like it now, and there's a karma crap going on now. There's a demanding justice right now. There's this and that, all of it. Sometimes you've had enough with a person or with a place or a people, and that's right, proper, in order to have. That's just my piece on it. I have way more to say about it. I just don't, right now, it does not seem to be the time. But that karma from the past had to come up and out of me and onto social media. And so any of my lovely people from when I was growing up, entertain me. Get on there and you just use a fake account. I don't care. Get on here and tell people the truth. Get on here and say, yep, I would look and hear Heather's sick, and I'd say that's what that bitch gets. That's her karma. That's your karma, bitch. They would say that. But they know they wouldn't say it because they know that I would say something to them for saying it. So that's why a lot of people, they hide. I'm not hiding. I never have hid. And I have always kind of been watched and given opinions about how I walk, how I talk, who I am, and who God created me to be here. And I've gone through my own personal stages in my life, like anyone else. And my story is intriguing to some people. Some people want to gossip about it. Some people want to laugh about it. And some people want to say, this is what I get. So there's always somebody out there. I will never forget, I was talking to a friend, and I thought I was going to get encouragement. I was like, well, at least they get to see what God's done in me. And they go, oh, no, I promise you they're not thinking that. Wow, okay, they're not thinking that, and you're promising they're not thinking that. Then since you said it that way, well, why didn't you offer the second part? What are they thinking? Since you know, well, of course they're not going to offer that. They're going to want you to think and ponder on that instead of ponder on, this is what they're thinking about you because they've told me, or I know, or whatever. And then let's flip that, because I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to flip it and turn it into a good thing, not let them with what they're saying in the bad thing, or the laughing, or or whatever, or wanting to go online and say, we remember you when. They can still do that. All you would do, while you think you're giving the devil, a foothold, you're actually showing forth God's grace and mercy in my life. So it's really not hurtful. Now, it will make people go, she's like that? Yeah. Everybody grew up, and everybody had an environment, and everybody had places where they had to learn to be themselves. You have to learn to grow to become your adult self. But you got to become an adult self. That's another thing. I raised my children. They're now all adults. And I'm like, I thought that's what I worked to make sure you didn't do. But it's still showing that they have issues with certain things. Those are my kids. I can say that. They're my kids. But y'all can't say that because they are not your kids. They're mine. Now, you can still say stuff and correct them But that's up to them to deal with you, and vice versa. I mean, all of us in a moment are mad because somebody offended us in some way, shape, or form, and we don't have the ability to just let it go because they said it or did it for some reason. A psychological terror has a reason for doing it, even if it is to have a game with your mental and social life. It may be their purpose. They may enjoy it. And once you figure that out and find that out, you have a choice to make. Do you stay around that person and let them just psychologically terrorize and torture you? And so that you go home like I would do and I would be yelling in my house and I didn't know what I was yelling about. I didn't know what was going on. All I know is that somebody said something and it triggers me. But they were doing it on purpose. They were setting me up. And they were baiting me with words and ideas and suggestions, just not even directly, indirectly. And God didn't give me the understanding of silence and process and just sit with him and let him lead and guide me so it didn't bother me again. But no, it bothered me for years. And years and years and years. And then, I don't know, I just followed the Lord in different directions for different things. And over that process of that time, process takes years, process. You finally learn and he finally shows you, walk away from this. You sat and you dealt with that, but it's time to walk away now. See, he gives a time and a season, and he says, it's time to walk away. It's time to say no here. It's time to say no to this person. Any request that they have, no is your answer. There are ways that God helps us. He trains us and he leads us and guides us. Not everybody's going to want to listen to me. A lot of people are offended by me. A lot of them, as soon as they hear me coming, they run in the opposite direction or they hide. These are people that their lives, they don't want to be around me. But see, they know when to hide. They don't want to deal with that. It's something they don't want to deal with. I never learned that, but then I finally learned that. So now I do it too. When somebody's coming, I go in the opposite direction. This karma thing, I went head first. So this is the head first video, and this is my take. And have at it, folks. I mean, that's just what we do. We go through life. We have our judgments, our mental judgments, our social judgments, our belief in social dynamics, and this is what we think. And all we're doing is listening to one another and deciding, hey, what's for me, what's not for me, and go on about our business. Now, there are going to be people that are going to comment. I don't know why, but they just feel the need to comment and put a stamp on something that was said or done or written. They want to put a stamp on it with some words. That's totally up to them. They have a right to do that. And I love the ones that disagree, because it takes heart to disagree with anybody like that, online, written, spoken, because it really triggers people and it just causes people just go nuts. I would say they just go ape shit. And it's like, what's your deal? And it's like, oh, I remember that. I would do it too. Somebody would say something and trigger me, and it would cause me to go nuts, because I'd be like, it would just trigger, because it would be like, I don't want to hear that. I got a flashback, or I didn't even see a flashback. It just triggered me, and I didn't want it, and I needed to change the dynamics, like to bring myself down. they were fine. And there's some people, it doesn't bother them. It's an enjoyment for them. So they don't get triggered. They get triggered. See, live. Anyway, they get triggered in other ways. Like you do certain things and it'll trigger the shit out of them and you'll see them flip out. So we all have our triggers. And yes, we all want to be at peace and at rest. So the triggers aren't as bad as where you want to cuss and yell and scream and all that and not have your wits about you. And I get that. We're all, by the time we've hit a certain, we shouldn't, but something still comes. And it's just, we just all work and process together to try to get to a better place. That's the whole idea. And we do want people to be nicer to us, and they're not sometimes, and they have their reasons for it. Like, I've got people that are, in their jobs, and they come home, and their bosses are unbearable. But yet their bosses obviously are saying they're unbearable. So it's who's right, who's wrong. I think they're all right, and I think they're all wrong. Because I can see both sides. Sometimes somebody coming in, like me when I was in my situation and I'd be upset and triggered, I couldn't see the other side. But a lot of times I could, and it didn't help me. People took advantage of that. They knew that I could see the other side. And so they would use it against me. And I never really understood that. Still really don't. But I'm just glad it gets involved now. And I can see God getting involved. He removes those people or he gives me the strength to not deal with it. But when I see people come home from work and their bosses are unbearable, their bosses are there to do a job. They're there to get paid to do a job. So they have orders that they set down for people to do. But they don't have to cut off their nose to spite their face, because that's kind of what they're doing. You have people that don't need to be micromanaged. They're self-regulated. They know how to work. They know what needs to be done, and you're not trusting them with that. And so you're cutting them off. And then you're yelling and screaming about how, they're not listening to you. You're not listening to them and their work. They got to have a place to be able to show forth their work. But when you've got 50 million different personalities in a room, you just can't keep them all straight. Some people can, some people can't. But when we lose our minds, we're not keeping it straight. So there's something that we need to do as bosses to get that under control. And then there's something we need to do as employees to get that under control. And that's what team building is. We all do it. We've all had to do it. Families are going to have to do it. Friends are going to have to do it. Anybody that wants to stay in relationship with one another is going to have to choose to be together. Like me, I give my adult children grace and mercy because they're newly married, they're newly families, or newly whatever they're doing. And some of them have had a little time that, they should have, turned at certain things, because really they shouldn't have done certain things at all. But they showed forth and did it. So there's nothing you can do about it but accept it, because they showed who they are. Okay, so you give them a little grace because you're like, you're newly married and I'm just not going to step in there because there's no need to. Let you figure it out. You'll figure it out. I had to figure it out. People that have been married for a long time, they can see that because they were there before. Somebody that's newly married can't look up and see somebody that's been married for a long time because they haven't been there yet. So, and yes, there are older people that just make your life a living hell and tell you how you shouldn't, because they never, and it just starts a whirlwind. And they'll do it just to, I don't know. It's not helpful. I don't know if they know it's not helpful. I don't think they care. I don't think anybody's thinking, if I say this, it's going to start something. Or somebody maybe that messed up mentally and socially and go, I know this is going to mess up them, so I'm going to say it so I can watch it and watch everybody transpire. But that comes down to a trusted environment. If you don't have a trustworthy environment, you can forget it. Because if somebody doesn't trust you, it's not going to work out. Now, if your kids are doing something and adults are doing something, they have their reason for doing it. If they have a spouse that's insecure, or they're insecure themselves, or both insecure just in different ways, that can be an age thing, it can be a social thing, or it could be a downright thing that they know better and just shouldn't be doing but are doing. You can't tell them because you've already told them and they're still doing it. And you've made them aware and they're still doing it. That's something that only God can deal with. I could holler karma and I could holler you're reaping, you're going to reap what you've sown here. But where does that get me or them? Nowhere. Other than sharing with you a drama and something that you can go back and go, ooh, and tell somebody else so that you can have something to talk about and have your junk food for the day. I don't want to give you junk food, and I don't really like junk food like that. I like junk food in real life, from time to time, but I grew up with junk food and I like it. But so I understand people that do that. I'm just not like that. So you have to remember adults are around other adults. People marry other adults and have kids with other adults, and they have families. So there's always these social dynamics everywhere, and everybody's going all different directions for a reason and for a season. When you've done a lot of work and when God has purposefully set you aside and you go into a room and you can see something plain as day and nobody else can see it, you don't really know what to do other than to step back. Because I could say something, it would change the dynamic of everything and everybody involved. Do I really want to do that? Does God really want me to do that? Because speaking up and out is going to change the dynamics. I chose to step back at first because I don't really want to change somebody's dynamic. They got a life they're living. They got to be around other people. So the social games that they're playing and the social judgments that they have at the moment, they have to survive there. It's, if God wants somebody to see a different way, okay. But I was just learning at that moment, hearing God and showing me the truth. It was between me and him. It wasn't for them at that time. Now, I could have said something, yes, and let the fallout be God's responsibility, totally. But a lot of times we don't think and step back. Sometimes it's not a good idea. But in this case, it was. Now, getting here on social media, now people can get a glimpse of what I'm thinking and what I'm seeing, and then they can make a choice of, oh. And so then they can think, is this something that maybe I do want to change? And since she can change it, maybe I can. Or they can totally say, she's crazy. I got to live this. I got to do this. And I am not investing that kind of time with these people that I'm only going to be around for this amount of time. And, I've got my plans. I got my, people are like, I got retirement and I know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. And I'm just not willing to put in that kind of time. I didn't have a choice. It was like my psychological makeup made it a mandatory that I learn these things and share them with other people here online. This is such a vast place, so many different people. You'll still get the people that you are around daily, or that you know you as a person, or have ever known you as a person. That's a given. But I'm saying now there are people that can go, hey, I didn't think that way, or maybe so, or I'll think about that, or maybe I might want to try that, or yeah, maybe God's calling me to it too. Everybody's going to be different. Or somebody can go, no, yeah, I need to go after this and I need to deal with this. Or no, I need to let it go. I need to back up. You know, everybody's going to have a different thing. Run with that. Just do you. Have a good day, y'all. Bye.